Agriculture is still one of the foundational cornerstones of our country. We've seen a lot of changes of how things operate within the ag business. Joining me now live in studio to discuss this is Byrne Cook, Chair of the School of Agriculture at Lethbridge College. Welcome to Bridge City News, Byrne.
Thank you for having us.
So farming and ranching has changed a lot over the number of decades, the last 10, 20, 30 years. Tell me about some of the new technology, how it's maybe helped farmers.
A lot of it is, there's an awful lot of things that are kind of new and novel. Probably the best one is the auto steer, where someone that has let's say a 40-foot implement, if they can drive straight and so that they're not overlapping and save 2 feet on that, that's 5% decrease in inputs. So that's probably the easiest one that we've picked up on, and if you're driving down the road and you can see how straight it is, it's not that he's just paying attention, it's actually auto steer and steered by GPS. So
that's nice.
Probably the most noticeable one that we have.
Good straight cut then, right?
Exactly.
How about autonomous vehicles? Is that going to be just around the bend for farmers too?
I think it is. It's available. I guess the issue is if I personally had $1 million piece of equipment, would I trust it and leave it out there? Maybe I'm getting too old and I wouldn't trust it, but it can be. But we still have issues with low spots and wet spots and power poles and that sort of thing. So the technology is there. It's a matter of whether the producer is willing and able to let himself trust that equipment to do the job.
Now I can imagine too with software, kind of speeds things up, maybe helps farmers as well when it comes to new technology. But is there a big expense as well with that, Byrne?
There is, and I think that's part of the reason why we see that the larger farms are taking it on. They can spread that cost over tens of thousands of acres rather than a smaller operator. Now, when you gather that information in, it's a matter of what we can do with that. So you're gathering it in, and this acre has this production or needs these inputs or has this disease, but what is the return on that? So oftentimes there's a lot of data, and people talk about big data, but it's a matter of fine-tuning it and making it cost-effective to make those changes.
How about soil and crop sensors? How effective are they?
They're very effective, but again, they're limited by how well we use them. If they're not placed properly and recording properly, and we're looking at the information and we're getting too much detail, sometimes I think that we can put too much emphasis on them. We also have other environmental changes that we can't control. So for example, if we set that up for an irrigation pivot and we go through and water and the next day we get a downpour, then the sensor really didn't help. So we still have a lot of variation in there, whereas in a greenhouse or something like that, we have a perfect condition. So
where are we at right now when it comes to biological pest control and growth enhancements?
It's a little bit slower than people would maybe hope. We do have some agents that are being tested. Again, we have to be conscious that they have to go through Agriculture Canada so that they can be released. For example, there's a toad in Australia that was released to help control, it's a tick there, that beetle that affects the sugarcane. Mm-hmm. And so they found out that, well, the toad would rather eat these other pests, and now the toad is a big problem down there in Australia.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why we like to look at these biological agents, but we have to be very careful as we start releasing them and what effect they'll have on the rest of nature.
What about organic farming? A lot of people I talk to these days, Hal, just eat organic, that's all you have to eat. Where are we at when it comes to organic farming? And are farmers embracing organic farming even more?
You know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. A lot of producers are going through and they're going organic because in the retail it does sell for more. The one concern personally that I do have, and as we mentioned before, it's a bit of a soapbox that I have, when we talk about trying to feed the world by 2050 and there's going to be so many people around, people in Canada, there's only about 10% of our paycheck goes to food. And so you and I have the choice of buying organic or not buying organic or you know, whatever we want to have, antibiotics or whatever the topic is. When we look at the rest of the world, people in Africa are spending about 70% on food. And so they don't have the option of spending twice as much. So we need to really look at it and be careful that it's not just a marketing ploy, because scientifically I don't think there's a lot of difference in the quality and the shelf life and that sort of thing.
What about GMOs? You know, you hear a lot of that in the news, and genetically modified organisms. It's somewhat controversial right now, but some people also have health concerns about GMOs. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts, again, I come from the background of science, and so I want people to show me. And I want results to be repeatable. And So if you go into the results and you look at exactly what GMOs are and what the purpose of them is, one of the major things that we use GMOs for is to adapt crops to different growing situations. So drought resistance or disease resistance or those sorts of things. So if we're looking at feeding the world, I don't think that we have a lot of option but to adopt these things. Now, some of them get black eyes. There's a couple of reports that have been out there, but they're really not repeatable if you really do check the science.
Let's talk about, we mentioned autonomous vehicles earlier. What about electric vehicles and that technology? Do you see that becoming more mainstream?
It is, and there's a couple of articles out there, and the experts in the field talk about a hybrid vehicle now. The big issue is there's enough power from electricity, but by the time you run around the field a couple times, you got to stop and plug your battery in. So the term that they come up with is energy density, and the fact that you can put a fuel tank of diesel on there and run all day and have enough power to do that. So the companies are coming out with what we call a hybrid tractor now, and it looks like they're just looking for new technology to have a better battery pack, in a sense, that can store energy so that they don't have to stop and plug in as often.
Now, you have experience with grains, but also livestock as well. What were your thoughts when the new Canada Food Guide came out? They said, you got to get your proteins from plants.
Exactly. I guess,
what are your thoughts?
I guess my thoughts, and I shouldn't be old school, but you know, we ascended the food chain, and here we are. We're going through and eating more plants than animal. We had a Tiffin conference a couple weeks ago, and their comments were that we're sending our red meat around the world to different countries that now can afford it, and we're eating crickets here on this end. So I guess it's a matter of flavor and sustainability. We have to look at where our beef is raised and that sort of thing. The food guide is kind of an interesting deal. Personally, I'm a lover of red meat. I love the fact that when I consume my amino acids, they're in the right profile, and I don't have to go and pick and choose and play Tetris with my protein sources to make sure that I get enough. So,
I guess we know where you stand. That's good. Okay, Byrne. How about some of the ag programs that are coming online now at Lethbridge College? Talk to our viewers about some of those.
We're pretty excited. We've got 3 different possibilities. So when our students come into the program, they kind of have a little bit of a perception of what they'd like to study, but they don't really know. And there's so many possibilities. So what we like to do is let them come in and kind of have a cross-section of plants, animals, business, let them get a taste for what they'd like, and then they can take a major in one of those 3 fields. So an animal major, plant major, we have what we call the Ag Enterprise Management Program, the business program. And then from there, our program ladders really well into a degree at the U of L or at the University of Saskatchewan. And right now, our primary focus is we're working on an applied technology degree at the college. And so all of this new techie stuff that's going on and being able to use the big data and the blockchain and those sorts of concepts, we're going to prepare our students with another 2 years of education, and so that they can be more prepared to you know, run all of these new things that are coming out.
Recent studies said the average age of a North American farmer now is 55 years old. I mean, in my books, that's not that old. But some other people think that is getting old, right? So how can we attract more young people to go into the ag business and become farmers?
I think one of the things that's happened is people in the agriculture world think that if they're not an actual primary producer, so they're on the land and raising livestock or grains, that they're not involved in agriculture. My challenge is for them to come get an education and then go back, and you pick a spot in any kind of background, be it business or science or service or sales or whatever, and there's a spot in agriculture for them. So as we can keep those individuals in agriculture and keep that talent in there, I think that's the key to the future, and that will automatically drive the age of that producer down.
Have you had mature students as well sign up, people that have maybe been laid off in the energy sector, want to try something different?
Certainly. We've had quite a cross-section of students, and a handful of non-farm students. About 10-15% of our students are not from farms, and some of them really do make some of our best students because they don't take anything for granted. They feel like they have to learn everything from the ground up, and so they've done very, very well.
How about students from other countries, not just here in Canada or the United States?
You know, we've had a couple of students from India, a couple from Japan. We haven't had a huge cross-section of students from there, and So that's something that we're looking at as well.
So what are some of the biggest challenges the agriculture industry is facing right now?
I guess a couple of the biggest challenges, we're kind of stuck with being the little brother for the states, and so a lot of their policy affects us. And so when Trump says to jump, we don't like to, but we have to, and so we react to some of that policy. Part of it is the issue that we're marketing more of a raw product, and the more value added that we can put into our products, I think the more adapted we are, and we're not going to have to just rely on shipping it out and someone else making money off of it. The other issue, I think, is trying to keep our youth in agriculture and keep them involved and let them know that there is a future here.
Any tariffs from the United States impacting things here? You? I mean,
You
we've
know,
talked about steel and aluminum, right?
Yeah.
But what else?
Yeah. Well, a couple of them, the dairy guys are getting a black eye, and
Right.
they're getting some of their market taken away. Under the table, as far as poultry, we're not just marketing chicken. There's different spent hens and different levels of meat products that get shipped. So if you read the fine print on a lot of those export agreements and tariffs and things, there's a lot of clawback, and like I say, it's tough being the little brother.
So what do you say to the farming family that says, you know what, Bernie, I'm done. I've had enough. I've been losing money for far too long. I'm getting out. So what do you say to that person that says, you know what, there's still hope?
Yeah, it's kind of tough because there is the economical situation. Sometimes they're just too small. I think the main key is communication. Before they get to that stage, they should be talking with their neighbors. They should be talking as a family, looking for alternative markets, looking for alternative products that they can produce. We're maybe not going to be the biggest producer, but we can be the best at producing some other niche market or that sort of thing. There's a lot of products out there, and we don't all have to be in beef or barley or wheat or canola. There's a lot of other things that we've seen that a lot of students have done very well.
I have a lot of friends in Saskatchewan, and they say to me, we've got wheat covered. We produce more wheat than you do in
Yeah,
Alberta. We
yeah.
produce more canola. Is that true? Is Saskatchewan still one of the front runners? Or is it even Ontario, maybe?
Well, I'm not sure who is on the top of the pile there. I'm not going to
Who's
even
number
try
one?
to
Come on, Bernie.
dig that one out. But when you look at it, it's the next product that comes in. So we've got different products. We've got lentils or beans or potatoes or sugar beets or hemp or mint or whatever it may happen to be. You know, we've got students that are raising tilapia, or others are setting up greenhouses and that sort of thing. I think that as long as a person is not limited by having to do something that's conventional and it's out there already, I think that there's a lot of potential for people.
Are farmers open to the potential of maybe raising hemp? Not THC hemp like cannabis, but I'm talking about hemp that's used in car parts, that's used in making driveways stronger with the concrete.
Certainly.
There's some good money in that,
There's a lot of potential for different things like that. And the trick is you don't have to be the supply the world. Like I say, with this tilapia, we've got a alumni that they sell fish into Calgary and Edmonton. And there's not going to be 40 or 50 of those producers, but he's doing very well himself. You know, so you've got to look for those individual opportunities.
Byrne Cook, Chair of the School of Agriculture at Lethbridge College, thanks so much for joining me in studio today.
Thank you so much for having us.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.